This hurricane season will be one that scientists study for years to come, thanks to its unusually quiet period during the traditional busiest time of year. Chief Meteorologist Chad Merrill sat down with a research scientist to explain why.
All right, folks, so we've had a very active hurricane season, September into the early part of October. I have Phil Klotboff with me, and he is the lead for the Colorado State University team. And can you tell me any records we've established so far this hurricane season?
Yeah, I mean, this hurricane season is now officially above average, but it got there in a very, very unusual way. So early on, we had Hurricane Beryl, the earliest Category 5 Atlantic hurricane on record. So we got off to a very, very busy start. We had 3 hurricanes through mid-August, which is also quite high. But then we went through the climatological or average peak of the season was extremely quiet. So from August 20th to September 23rd, we actually had the least overall storm activity since 1994. So it was extremely quiet during the average kind of peak of the season. And then it got just absolutely bananas busy since then. We've had 5 hurricanes. We had 3 hurricanes simultaneously in October for the first time on record in the Atlantic. But then I think, obviously, most importantly, we've had 2 very impactful hurricanes. Hurricane Helene, which made landfall in late September, and then Hurricane Milton just a couple of days ago, hitting Florida as well. So it's been a very unusual hurricane season in that we're above normal. So the numbers look okay, like an above normal season, but we got there and not the way that you would kind of expect, given kind of historically the way these hurricane seasons behave.
So in the beginning of the season, there was some Saharan dust blowing across the Atlantic, and also we had this big sprawly and high pressure ridge that developed, and the NAO went completely negative. Do you attribute the quiet start to the hurricane season as a combination of the Saharan dust and the very warm mid and upper levels of the atmosphere across the Atlantic?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So we had a lot of dust through mid-August, and then about the time the season really, really tailed off, the dust actually dropped fairly substantially. But I do think that you're right about there was a lot, the upper level temperatures, so temperatures high up in the atmosphere, 20, 30,000 feet, were very, very warm. So the surface temperatures were warm, the ocean temperatures were warm, and that's normally a plus for hurricanes. But the upper level temperatures were so warm, it tended to kind of stabilize the atmosphere somewhat.
And another thing for the public, too, is not only focusing on the track of the storm, but other mid-latitude systems that could impact, like predecessor rain events. And that's one of the reasons why we got so much substantial rain across the east. So impacts don't just occur right along the path. They are pretty widespread, and other factors contribute to the overall, impact from the storm.
Correct. Yeah. And certainly, as you mentioned with Helene, I mean, obviously, there was a lot of damage in Florida where the storm hit, but then there was obviously the predecessor rain event. So basically what that is effectively like you have Helene, which was in the Gulf of Mexico and had all this moisture associated with it. And basically, if you looked at the satellite, you could see all that moisture streaming well inland, all the way up, actually, all the way up into Vermont. But unfortunately, there was basically a front that stalled over the Appalachian Mountains. And so all that moisture got pulled up into that stalled front. And every time you have basically you're forcing air up along that front over a mountain range, it's going to just rain and rain and rain. So they had a ton of rain before Helene even came on shore. And so then you had that rain on top of basically the predecessor rain that was still associated with Helene that brought obviously the catastrophic flooding that we saw in North Carolina, Tennessee, all the way up into Virginia, even in the upstate of South Carolina, even a little bit in Georgia.
Well, thanks for joining me, Phil. Appreciate the information.
Sounds good. Take care, Chad.